So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Bringing Law to Life session. And my name is Katie Dukes, and I am a Student Experience Manager and Lecturer here at the Open University. And I'm here with my colleague, Grace Allen, who is a Senior Lecturer and Assistant Head of Student Experience. And we're absolutely delighted this evening to have with us Dr. Francine Ryan, who is a Senior Lecturer and also the Director of the Open Justice Centre, which I'm really looking forward to chatting to Francine about later. So just before we start chatting to Francine, I just wanted to remind everybody that there are in total 14 of these sessions, and we're about halfway through now, I think. So you can find the recordings on your Study Home Connect page, and they're also available on the Open University YouTube, the Law School YouTube channel, if you want to catch up with the ones we've had or with this one afterwards. So the reason we're having these Bringing Law to Life sessions is really to think about equality, diversity, inclusion and accessibility in the profession. The profession, both solicitors and barristers, have recognised that this is a real issue, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And so we wanted to talk to all of the fantastic people we've got working at the Open University about their experience of the profession, with a particular eye to thinking about you as students at the Open University and overcoming any challenges or perceived challenges of entering the profession. So and then at the end, once I've chatted to Francine, there'll be some slides directing you towards careers, for resources at the Open University, and also there'll be a couple of minutes for you to fill out a survey if you'd be kind enough to do that. So Francine, good evening to you.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. And so thank you to all the students who've also attended live tonight. It's really fantastic to be here.
Thank you very much indeed. So Francine, if we can just start with a really open question. So I wondered if you would be able to describe your journey into the profession.
Yes, certainly. So to give you a little bit of background about me, I was first in family to go to university. I went to a very ordinary kind of comprehensive school, but I had always wanted to be a lawyer. Really from the age of 11, I knew that I wanted to study law, and probably similar to lots of other people, probably for the completely wrong reasons, in that if for those of you who are as old as me will remember, there were two TV programs, one called Ally McBeal and one called LA Law. And I was a very avid viewer of both those programs, and I thought that law would be incredibly glamorous. And I was really kind of attracted to that idea of helping people and kind of working in that, what I saw as kind of like a professional context. And so that was kind of the big driver for me. I went to university when I was 18. I went to Lancaster University and did my undergraduate degree. And then when I was at university, I was incredibly naive about what I was going to do next. I just kind of thought I would be a solicitor. So I applied for some training contracts. I knew that I wanted to work in Manchester. I didn't really know what area of law that I wanted to work in. I just really wanted a job. I wanted someone to kind of pay me to be a lawyer. So I applied. I was very fortunate to get a job, a training contract, which I did after I did my legal practice course, and I went to work in a firm in Manchester, and I did litigation. And then I worked there for a little while, and after that I moved to I was doing quite a lot of defendant work, and I realised that actually I didn't want to do that. I kind of wanted to work for real people. And so I moved to a different firm, and I was doing claimant work, and eventually I specialised in disease litigation. And when I thought about it being glamorous, I very quickly realised that being a lawyer is not terribly glamorous. So most of my work was acting for people who been exposed to different chemicals, fumes, dermatitis type claims whilst at work. And so I spent a lot of my time as a solicitor going to different factories across the north and meeting people and finding out about their illnesses and things like that. So it probably was a lot less glamorous, but it certainly was an amazing opportunity to be able to help people and try to make a little bit of a difference. And so I guess that's, I suppose, my sort of decision to go into law probably reflects lots of other people, that you are really curious, but you don't quite know what to expect.
Yeah, and that's Thank you. That's really interesting. So I was just thinking about when you first got your training contract and
Mm.
went to work at the first firm, and you said you were doing defendant work. So
Yes.
I wondered if you might, I mean, the students might not perhaps understand what that means. And
Yeah.
was it in a personal injury firm or a
Yeah.
clinical? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a large litigation firm that did a kind of, they had 3 or 4 different offices across the north, west, and then eventually had a London office. And
Yeah.
they were mainly working for insurance companies. So we did
Right.
a range of work from catastrophic injury, so people who'd had a very serious accident, maybe in a road traffic accident or at work, lots of disease type claims, so things like deafness, stress at work, asbestos claims, a whole array of those kind of things. But we were acting, so the work was, we got instructions from from lots of different insurance companies,
Right.
and so that was really great grounding in terms of thinking about clients, because you have an institutional client, which is very different when you have an individual client. So when I transferred over and started working for individuals, although we were instructed by trade unions, we were directly working for individuals, and it's a very different experience working for an institutional client and working for an individual client. And that kind of taught me a lot about thinking about how you interact with people, because
Yeah.
really law is about people.
Yeah.
I guess if you take anything away from this talk tonight, is that being a lawyer is about being able to communicate with people, making people feel at ease, being able to help them through a process. And that doesn't matter if they're a big client or a very small client, but
Hmm.
those people's human skills are really critical to being a lawyer.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, I had quite a similar experience actually, because when I went into law, I also didn't really know what I was doing. And I ended up going to work similarly, probably in a sort of commercial firm and acting for great big clients where, actually what I really wanted to do was work for individuals,
Yeah,
and I was interested in social justice. So I'm just thinking about people listening to this and advice in that
yeah.
respect that you might be able to give them in terms of, how might they put themselves into a position before getting that first job where they're more likely to get something they're passionate about or want to pursue?
Yeah. So I would say that really the one of the best things you can do if you've got the opportunity to be able to do that is to get some practical experience. And that doesn't have to be something it doesn't have to be working at a law firm. It doesn't have to be an internship or anything like that, or a virtual placement or anything like that. I think it's about, if you can, going to work or volunteering with organisations like Citizens Advice, law centres, and getting some real practical experience of
Hmm.
different areas of law. And you don't need to know exactly what it is that you want to do, but certainly you can work out quite quickly the areas that perhaps you don't want to do, which is equally as valuable as knowing what you might want
Yeah.
to do. But you also have an understanding of how it is to work with people. Uh, you can find out lots of information about kind of the nature of different people's problems, and also you learn those skills that are transferable. It doesn't matter what the size of your client is, around kind of how you work with clients, how you draft letters for clients, how you talk to clients, how you take instructions, how you break down a problem, particularly because clients don't come to you with a nice neat Iraq problem question. They come
No.
to you with messy things that don't always necessarily make sense, and part of your job is to actually work out what it is their problem is, because often they don't necessarily know what their problem is, and that's part. So I think if you can have the opportunity to do some volunteering for Citizens Advice, you can do stuff around triaging, so you can work doing some telephone stuff for them, so you don't even have to leave your own home. So there's opportunities, particularly, I know it's more complicated for our students compared to perhaps students in brick universities, but there are
Mm.
ways in which you can do that. So I would really highly recommend taking opportunities where you can, to get some practical experience, because I think it's really invaluable.
And I suppose from the experience that you have described, and I very much relate to, about our very early days in the profession, in some senses, do you think it's right to say that any experience is worthwhile? I mean, you and I both had the experience of wanting to move away from the place we started out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all experience is really important. I also think it's important to look at as well what you do in your day job. So just because if lots of our students are working, and I think sometimes they forget they have incredible skills that they kept from their day job. So thinking about those and if there are any opportunities within your day job. So certainly I've had
Yeah,
students in the past where they've worked. So I had a student who worked for quite a large company and she managed to negotiate a little bit of time in their legal department. So she was able to kind of just go and do a bit of shadowing or a bit of talking
yeah,
to somebody. So you can also look for opportunities. They don't have to be necessarily volunteering, but you can look for opportunities if within your own organization people are doing some type of legal work or insurance work or health and safety or risk or anything like that. See whether or not you can go and talk to someone, you can go shadow someone, you can just have a couple of days, because I think that you will find that really valuable experience.
yeah. I think that's really good advice because everywhere, once you become a lawyer, you can see that everywhere you look, there are
Oh
potential
yes.
legal problems. But when you're a
Indeed.
student, you don't have that kind of perspective on the world, do you? So I
Yeah.
think that's really good advice. That health and safety, because most places have health and safety, don't they? And
Yeah.
risk compliance and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Um, so, Francine, how moving away from that slightly, how accessible do you think the profession is?
Well, I definitely think it's been an evolution. So when I very first started, it's hard to believe, but we weren't allowed to wear trousers to work. We had to wear skirts. You couldn't work from home. That was seen as, it was inconceivable that you could work from home or you could have any kind of flexible working. And things have definitely changed. Partly through kind of just the evolution of as people change and working practices change. The global pandemic has as awful as that experience was, has had some positive impacts in terms of flexible working now is much more law firms are much more appreciative of that they can see the value of that because the pandemic proved that that kind of worked. So in lots of law firms now there is hybrid working, so you can work some days in the office and some days at home. There
Yeah,
is much more opportunities to do flexible working, so law firms are much more aware of kind of making arrangements, particularly for people who've got caring responsibilities or maybe have a disability. So I think things have moved on and I think things are a lot better in terms of that much more supportive working environment. I think it's also just important to remember that law is an amazing career to have, but it is hard, it's challenging, it's demanding, and that comes with I was a litigator for a period of time. I worked part time. It's hard to work part time when you've got cases because the law doesn't stop on a Friday, and that is a challenge. So I think you have to be aware of those kind of things. But I think you will find that that there has been a huge shift. And law firms are a lot more willing to be accommodating and recognise how to accommodate the talent that's coming through. And I would say certainly within relation to Open University students, that ability to manage your time, to
mm,
study, to work, to have caring responsibilities, that's something that law firms really recognise the value of, because you're not somebody necessarily who's young, who's never done these things before. You've learned how to manage your time. You've managed to do spin multiple plates, and that's what being a lawyer is about, spinning multiple plates. So I would really be encouraging students to really sell the kind of those skills that you've developed through studying and working at the same time, because those will really help you as well if you go into the profession.
yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And do you think it's true to say that different areas of the profession are more or less accessible? So,
Yeah, I I think in terms of social justice, areas like that, I think are particularly so. For example, I would really encourage students to look at the opportunities within law centres. So if that's an area of passion and interest, we have a former student of ours, in fact, two former students of ours who now work practicing in law centres, and they wanted to do social justice work, and that was very flexible, and they also got help supporting them with their SQE, the Solicitors Qualifying
brilliant.
Examination. So there are ways in which you can be supported. I think if you do what we call non-contentious work, so you're not in court, I think that can be more flexible because you don't the
Yeah,
deadlines are not the same as if you've got litigation deadlines. But I think it's important to think about the areas of law, but I think it's also really important to follow your passion, because I think if you need to really want to do that area of law. But I certainly think that areas of non-contentious work, maybe do kind of wills, probate, maybe property law, some of those can be more flexible because the deadlines might be different. But I think the nature of clients and the nature of expectations around clients, generally, whether they're a litigating client or not, are, the service that you have to deliver. I guess clients have expectations and law firms have expectations around that. But yeah, I think you can look at areas of law and think, is that going to be more manageable?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about, being determined if you want to access a particular area of the profession. I had one student who interestingly wanted to go into catastrophic injury, and she applied to the same firm 6 times, and
Yeah,
eventually she got in.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
she
Yeah,
was
yeah,
absolutely passionate about that area,
yeah.
and yeah, so
No, absolutely.
excellent.
I think
Yeah,
I think if students are making applications to training contracts and they get knocked back, please don't not apply
don't take it
again.
personally. Yeah.
No, and I've also know lots of stories of people who've applied multiple times and then eventually got in, and I think that's really important because it is a hard process and it can be quite, can be quite difficult. But if it's what you want, if you keep going, you will get there.
And I think just before we leave that, just a final point. So you can apply to the same place lots of times, but it sounds like you were quite lucky when you first applied for a training contract. And did you? I had to. I think I made 40 or 50 applications, and then I got one interview, and absolutely went for that one interview. But
But yeah,
so there are
yeah.
different. Yeah,
I definitely made a lot of applications, and I think I can't remember. I was very fortunate, and I think this was it was a different time in that I think it's important to recognise that. So I graduated in 1993, so there were less people studying law
yeah,
than there are now. So I think that is a reflection of the time. Um, but I did make lots and lots and lots of applications, and I was lucky enough to be offered 2 jobs. But I also went to other interviews and wasn't successful. So
yeah.
it was a lot easier, I think, than it currently is. But you still had to make lots and lots of
Yeah,
applications.
yeah. You have
And
to develop that resilience, don't you, to
you do.
rejection?
You do, and also to remind students they have the benefit of a Word document. And
Yes.
so back in the day, we were doing handwritten, lots of handwritten letters, and you had to do your research through. You didn't have the internet to do your research, so in some ways, it was there were some aspects that were perhaps less challenging, but in other aspects, it was much more challenging. There weren't websites of law firms. It was that kind of very early days
Yeah,
of the internet and email. So there was no email. It was all handwritten letters or typed letters,
yeah,
typed CVs, which now you look back and you think you just can't really imagine it. But yeah, so in some ways, finding firms, doing the research on firms was much,
yeah.
much more tricky because that information wasn't openly available. Where now that's much easier in terms of finding the information about law firms and doing your research, because that's a really important thing to do. You must do your research if you're applying.
And find the one that matches your interests and your style of how you want
Exactly.
to work. Yeah. I think you've already hinted at your answer to the next question, but it's
Yeah.
how would you describe the work-life balance in the profession? A thorny question.
Yeah, so I think it's hard. But I think in any job where you are paid well, and lawyers are generally paid well, not, I wasn't earning like, for example, a corporate lawyer in London at a Magic Circle firm, but I think you have to recognise that lawyers are generally paid well, and therefore it's not probably a 9 to 5 job in that respect. It is a job where you're expected to do kind of, you need to do the work. So it is, I think there are challenges, and clients are challenging, work is challenging. But if you enjoy it and you love it, then actually it's a real privilege to do it. And I acted for clients. I did lots of deafness cases as well, where people work down mines. I went to factories. That was really hard work. That's like, I had clients who were working in really difficult conditions for 12 hours a day, with very minimal breaks in hot, dusty environments. That's challenging. There's not much work-life balance there. So in some ways, yes, it's tricky and it needs managing, but in comparison, I feel very privileged to privileged to do what I did.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, actually, isn't it? That the
Yeah,
kinds of sacrifices you're making as a lawyer are totally different to the kinds of
yeah,
sacrifices you're going to be making in different
yeah,
careers.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so in the area of equality and diversity, it's recognised, particularly at conferences this year, I think, in this area, that mentors are really
Hmm.
important, can have a massive impact on accessibility. I was wondering, Francine, did you have any mentors or any role models that helped you to know, for example, we haven't really talked about your change into your career to be a legal academic, but which you're obviously, really happy doing that. So you've had a really interesting career trajectory in that sense.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you can give any advice or talk about your own personal experience of mentors or role models.
Yeah, so I think in terms of my, what I would say, like I never intended to be a legal academic. That I was always going to stay being a lawyer, and I did a little bit of tutoring for the Open University when I was in practice, and I discovered that I really liked it.
Ah,
And I done when I was in practice, because we used to work for trade unions. I did quite a lot of training, and that's kind of my first foray into kind of teaching, and I really enjoyed it. And I realised that how lucky was I that I was able to that doing a law degree not only allowed me to be a lawyer, but it also enabled me to kind of transition to a different profession as well. So I feel, very lucky to have chosen that degree to be able to do that. So
yeah.
yeah, so I didn't, as I say, I never planned on this second career. It kind of just happened by accident, and I just really enjoyed it. And I got to meet some really interesting people at the Open University. And I've only ever worked for the Open University as an academic. So kind of the people that I met through the Open University were great mentors in terms of moving into academia. And when I did my PhD, and there was a former colleague, a former tutor, Emma Jones, who was amazing in terms of she really inspired me. In terms of law, probably kind of less so, apart from the role models that I've already talked about, which are probably slightly inappropriate in terms of Ali McBeal. But what I would say to students, if there are opportunities, and so to give you an example, I am module team chair of a module called W360, and I am also director of the Open Justice Centre, and we run a mentoring programme with the Government Legal Service.
Ah,
And
yeah.
so we have a mentoring programme that's open to level 3 students, where they will be paired up with a mentor. We've had 26 students go through it this year.
Brilliant.
I think those kind of things are invaluable, because you get to speak to a lawyer. They give you some advice around kind of their journey into the profession. Everyone's journey is different. So I would really recommend those kind of opportunities. I'd also recommend like lots of the different kind of law kind of newspapers and different like I can't, I think it's called, is it called Lawyer Portal? And I'm sure there'll be some links with the careers. They have lots of kind of like days in the life of people as a lawyer, or they have lots of kind of people coming to do careers talks. So I would definitely encourage people to kind of take up any opportunities you see where someone's talking about being a lawyer. And the other thing that I just wanted to talk about is that in July, as part of the work that we're doing, we're running an employability week, and we're bringing back, I think, about 6 or 7 former OBU students who now work in the profession.
Oh,
So they
wow.
are solicitors and barristers, they work in law centres, they're doing all different types of work. And so please, the sessions will all be recorded, you can attend live. But that's a fantastic way of being able to hear the stories of the people that have been Open University students, who have walked your walk, who understand exactly what it is like to be an Open University student, and they are now working in the profession. And I think
Brilliant.
that's probably the best form of mentoring, role modeling you can ever get. And the other thing is to go on LinkedIn and and ask for people to follow people, connect with people, and reach out and ask people. You do no harm in asking people, and you'll be surprised if you do some research about them and tell them why you want a bit of mentoring from them. You'll be amazed at how people are happy to do those kind of things. So build a network if you can, and take advantage of the opportunities as well that the Open University offer, like these series, the employability week that we're doing, because there'll be some fantastic opportunities to hear some really great stories.
Oh, well, I've got loads of questions
Sorry.
about that, but I'm conscious of time,
Yeah, yeah.
Francine. So I'm just wondering, Grace, if there are any questions in the Q&A.
No, there are not any questions, but there's a couple of minutes left if anyone does want to post anything. But I think you guys can continue
Okay,
chatting away for now.
if you put your hand up, Grace, if there's
I will do.
question in the Q&A. Thank you. That'd be brilliant. I'll come back to it. So thinking about reaching out to individual solicitors, barristers, my experience is that there's a really unusual willingness actually to act as a mentor, and often, as you say, there are formal schemes I know set up by the Inns of Court for people that want to go to become a barrister. But so yeah, I mean, I just thought we could talk a bit about that. How might, it's really hard to imagine if you've never done that before. How would you approach somebody? What would you say? You've suggested being on LinkedIn, but can you give any hints or tips on that, do you think?
So first of all, I think get your profile on LinkedIn. It's really important, and lots of OU students I see on LinkedIn send requests on LinkedIn to people like me, to people that you can see who are in your network. I'm always happy to accept requests from students, and I've got loads of students that I've connected with. So do that, and then decide on what if you want to be a barrister, whether you want to be a solicitor, what is it that you want to do, and then have a look for some people. But don't just send out some sort of blanket, dear X, I think you're great, please will you be my mentor. You need to do some research. So you need to find out about them, what they do, what their areas of law are, what they've been involved in, what their special interest is. And then you need to craft something that is kind of relevant to them, to explain who you are, why you want to go into the profession, what they can perhaps do to help you, and a bit about why you think they are useful. And then something around, I'd leave it kind of open-ended, say, appreciate that, you might get lots of these requests and you might not be able to assist me, but if you could point me in the direction of anybody else who might be able to assist, then you might find that if you've approached, say, for example, like a partner in a law firm, they might not be able to help, but they might say, oh, well, my trainee solicitor might be able to help you, or something like that. And to be honest, if you do it in a polite and considered way, and it's much easier now because you can get hold of people's email addresses really easily. Appreciate that people are busy, so you might not get a response, but you never know, and you might just have one conversation that is really illuminating and tells you something. And I think if you do it in a way that's kind of polite, considerate, and shows that you've taken the time to find out about someone and you're aligning to what it is that they're doing, I think people are often very flattered that people reach out and people are prepared to help or have a conversation about their journey or things that they could suggest to you.
Yeah, I think that advice is gold dust to students. I really do, because people in the profession are generally really willing to help and act as mentors. Brilliant. So, Francine, thank you for organising the event in the summer. How can students find out about that?
So we're about to send out emails. So in the next week or so, there will be Camel emails out to all students about it with the programme, and they'll be able to sign up, and we will be recording all the sessions as well, so that if people can't attend live, they will be able to listen to them. But it's whatever the week of the 5th of July is, and we've got sessions at lunchtime and sessions in the evening, and we've pretty much got Monday to Thursday, two a day, two each day, and we have some fantastic OU alumni, as you can imagine.
Wonderful.
Coming back to talk about their work. So we have 2 barristers. I think we have 3 solicitors working in different areas of law, and we also have people working in law centres and things like that. So it's a real varied mix of people.
Wonderful, Francine. Well, we have almost run out of time, so I just want to say thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. So just hearing your own personal story, but also your professional ideas really for the students is invaluable. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
So here we have the careers resources, just to remind you. So these slides, you can click on the links on these slides and they will work for you. I'm not going to click on them for you now, but you can see you've got law specific resources on your Law Study Home website around careers and employability. You've got services on the Help Centre, which include guides, resources and tools. You've got your own career planning guide, which I would really recommend, because planning is really helpful when you're thinking about a kind of 2-year, 5-year, 7-year career plan. And then the Opportunity Hub, so you can find actual opportunities, book onto a workshop, and then one-to-one help with your CV, and contact a careers consultant to get that help. So lots and lots of resources for you there. Again, there are links here. So you've got build your future with career confidence and navigate your future activity pathway. So please do have a look into those and start thinking, whatever stage you're at. I think in the legal profession, it's never too soon. There are going to be different opportunities for you, whether you're 18 or 58, frankly, and whatever stage of study you're at, you're going to be in a position to get some valuable experience. So you can see here, just to finish this part, also once you've finished, so if there are any people here that are on the verge of finishing their degree, you can make the most of the career service up to 3 years following finishing at the OU. So again, you might be finding different experience or needing more help. So do come back and ask the careers team for help there. So if you would be very kind, please, and just spend a minute or two filling out the feedback survey, we would be extremely grateful so that we can put on lots more events like Bringing Law to Life, like the kind of event Francine's been talking about. So getting your feedback is really valuable to us on these events. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you again, Francine.
Thanks so much.